What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in. This is Mr. Obvious, and thank you to the first episode of the podcast. Today, I have Denver Metro Audits, and we just kind of sit down and have a little fireside chat, and just kind of go into some topics. Want to get you guys a little bit more involved. Hopefully, you got some other guests coming along. So, just going to get right into this one. You guys, let me know now in the comments below. Any other questions you want to ask for anybody else, or how this one goes, or how do you like the format? So I'm just going to dive right into it. Mr. Obvious out. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and share, and make sure you smash that notification bell. Mr. Obvious out. About a year ago. Been watching probably since, 2014, 2015 or so, and then some just shit happened in my life and just kind of got into this. And my daughter actually took me to a VidCon down in LA last year, got immersed kind of in that. Obviously, I'm not into that kind of culture or anything, but my daughter kind of got me into the video aspect of it and then the whole YouTubing and stuff. So just kind of melded into this and kind of just fell into it. And then some shit happened at work, and then I was like, I deal with that, and just was kind of like my outlet. So, brief intro there.
Right. No, cool, man. Thanks for having me up. And so you said you've been watching since 2014, because I didn't even know that the auditing community was around that long.
Yeah, I don't even know if it was like auditing so much, if it was just people starting to post videos of like cop watching or, or advocacy people. I probably started really, auditors probably started really popping up, at least that I started getting really popular watching maybe, a few years later, but it was really just like kind of the tip of the iceberg. And then I want to say for me, like when COVID hit and I was just stuck at home for like a year, then it was like, whoa, what is all this other stuff that I never even, got to experience before? And then, some things happened there for me, in life. And then I kind of got into it just kind of as an outlet. So,
right.
That was kind of my path as far as like watching stuff on YouTube and social media and stuff like that. So,
yeah, that's kind of how I started too. I actually started watching Adam Kokesh, and you know who he is?
I've heard his name.
Yeah, he's a civil liberties activist. So he was, he's an Iraq war veteran, and he's a libertarian. And so he kind of, he's very anti-government, and he's an anarcho-capitalist, which is kind of like the sexy version of libertarianism. So he believes in the abolition of the state completely, which is the same way I believe. So we believe that we can organize society in a way that's non-violent without, pointing guns at people, essentially, because to govern is to control by force. So I started watching him, and it's the way that he lays it out really struck a chord with me. And so he actually did an audit. It was like a cop watch. It was really him just recording on a sidewalk outside the White House, and the Parks Police came out and told him that he has to have a permit to do that. So clear violation of the First Amendment. Yeah, right. So, okay. And there's plenty of other people there recording on their cell phones, but since he had like a bigger camera, I guess he needed a permit. So the way that he
is what you're kind of saying.
Right. So the way that he just dismissed the cops, I was like, wow, that's crazy. I'd never seen anyone like, talk to police like that. And so then that kind of just led into, the algorithm from my YouTube account started showing me cop watching, and I found out what auditing was. I can remember the first people I watched. I think the first ones were like High Desert Community Watch. I was watching him, and then Bay Area Transparency, and I started getting hooked. So, but yeah, that's pretty much how I started too. Kind of one thing just led to the other.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, I met some auditors, and when I say auditors, I met somebody who would be an auditor and somebody who considers themselves an observer. So you've probably seen Slow County Observer. He's out here. And then I don't know if you've heard of Katie Kidman. She's out here. Yeah. Nasty Nathaniel's out in this area. But I actually went to court to support Katie on a charge that she was with. And that's really kind of what led me into getting this too, because I had just getting started. I might have had like 1,000 subscribers, and and then she's like, hey, you want to come down? I'm going to court, you can help support me, and Slow County Observer is going to be here. And I was like, okay, I'll come help you guys. And that's kind of another thing that got me into that whole thing too. And then she actually just talked to her on the phone last week, and she mentioned that guy's name, Adam Kokesh, and I think her and some other people are starting to get together, and I believe mentioned his name and maybe getting together with him too. So that was kind of interesting that you brought that up as well.
Right here, man. This is like my Bible. It's the best book you could ever read. It's available for free on every digital format. So you can go to YouTube and he has audiobook where he reads it himself. It's a short book too. Like I think the audiobook version is like 3 hours long, but if you read this yourself, you could read it in well under that. It's not very thick.
And did they have it
But
like on an audiobook anywhere, or did you
yeah,
just?
on his YouTube channel. It's available on every digital format, but he does have it on his YouTube channel too. So
Okay,
yeah, I highly recommend that book. I had a bunch of them. He gave me a whole case of them, and I was handing them out, but I ran out. So I would mail you one, but I don't have any more.
that's fine. It's
A
available
hard
for free.
copy.
I'll
Yeah.
definitely check that out. I think that's very cool. So, and then so meeting Katie, and then Slow County. Obviously, there's kind of two different takes on things. Like I think she started me, getting into auditing as far as like actually doing it myself. I went out with her a couple of times, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And it was super scary. And then like actually talk to people with a camera, and I was like, and I'm still very nervous about it. I'm more of a I love video editing. I got into that. Like I said, my daughter took me down to VidCon. I kind of got into that. Won some camera equipment, won a GoPro, and then kind of really got into the back end of things. And then that's when she introduced me to, like, she's like, "Hey, do you want to come to a police station with me?" And I was like, "Sure." So then I went with
Yeah.
her, and then when I talked to Slow County, he's like, got his perspective on like he doesn't like to be called an auditor. He likes to be like an observer and just watch things. And then you talk to somebody who are like real auditors, and I don't know if you want me to call you that or if you want to just how you want me to define yourself, but it was interesting how I met those people, and now meeting yourself, and just different takes on how other people have viewed what I'll say we do, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I consider myself an auditor. I mean, my name is Denver Metro Audits. I do a lot of audits, but I do everything, cop watching. Um, More than an auditor, I like to consider myself a civil liberties activist. So
I would agree.
this really is kind of like what I'm using to get my feet in the door. My true mission is not to really hold local governments accountable because that's just really like a drop in the ocean. And yeah, I already have made some changes, with the DMVs, where they're doing retraining now, trying to get everyone to understand that we have a right to go in there and record. But you know, that's just that's small stuff. You know what I mean? So
That
even
brings
if
in my
even if I
question.
get case law, you know what I mean? That's still small stuff. It's really government as a whole. It's just this giant beast. You know what I mean? And so, clearly we've come to a place in the United States where it's totally not what the founders wanted, which was, a constitutional republic that's very small and limited, and it's just grown into this giant thing, and it's kind of like cancer.
Oligarchy.
So yeah, like, less cancer is better than more cancer, and in the same way, less government's better than more government. So like, it always ends up this way, right? So absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so
Right.
you'll, cut it down. So we have 100% right now. You cut it down to like 3%, small government. Eventually it's like cancer. It's just going to grow back into this huge beast, and it's going to become tyrannical again. So, I mean, the founders knew that, and that's the reason why the First Amendment is the way it is, and it's the first on the list. And then the Second Amendment is right behind that because they know they just got done fighting, in the Revolutionary War against a tyrannical government. So, that's
Uh,
why the Second Amendment is there to not be infringed. But as you can tell, when the government can't even follow their own rules,
yeah.
and there's so many unconstitutional laws, and the Supreme Court is kind of a joke, that it doesn't really give them much credibility, and you can tell that it's going in the opposite direction of what the founders envisioned.
Very good. Yeah. And to back that up, one of my statements is always you can't have the first without the second.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, you can't just give all the government all the power and all the guns, right? And then say, okay, well, we gave you all this. Now just limit yourself, okay? Make sure you don't become too crazy. So, like if every man has a God-given right to defend himself. It's not just the Constitution. Like the Constitution protects my rights, but I have natural rights. So when you were back, the human existence has been around about 100,000 years. So, back in caveman times, it was your God-given right to protect yourself. So if you had to make a spear or, yeah, have a rock and throw it at someone, we all have that right to protect ourselves. And now, if you are a felon, you can't own a gun. But here's the thing is that I don't know one single American that has not committed a felony. So there's two people. There's felons, and then there's people that didn't get caught, right? So even the most law-abiding citizens maybe sometime experimented with drugs or something like that, And so there's so many non-violent
Well, just as simple as
felonies out there.
trafficking is across state lines, right? I mean, how many times
Yeah.
have you just gotten in your car and not so much me out here in California, but say somebody on the East Coast or somewhere in the state like yours, and just went to a different state just because they were traveling on vacation and were like, oh, I brought this that was legal in my home state, but I went to this other state that's somehow just because it's the same thing is now illegal.
Right.
That's but then came back to their home state, right? You've now committed a felony.
Yep. And, like that's another thing is that, really borders are just arbitrary lines written on a map that the government said, that's a whole nother issue. But so yeah, like if you're a felon, the majority of felons are nonviolent, and I feel like if it's not a law that needs to be enforced 100% of the time, then it shouldn't even be a law. You know what I mean? So if cops are using discretion, then it shouldn't be a law, period. But, there's tons of people that have, they're in possession of a plant or, they decided they want to put some drug into their own body. And so I'm not pro drugs or pro hardcore drugs, but I'm anti lock someone in a cage for using drugs. And so just because, alcohol is the preferred method of intoxicating yourself, just because the majority of the people like alcohol and this person likes Coke doesn't mean any difference. It's a drug's a drug. I mean, alcohol causes more deaths. There's more deaths, alcohol related deaths than all the other drugs combined, right? So they take away your right to defend yourself. And if you're a felon, you can't even have pepper spray, taser, nothing. Like you can't have anything. So it's totally just backwards, right?
I completely agree. Completely agree. So yeah, and I don't know if it's going anywhere, but I heard that there was some group working on trying to get non-violent felons to have their rights, back. I mean, especially if the point of the system is you did your time, shouldn't you have your rights back after you've done your time in society, right? Okay, I should get my rights back.
Right.
And
absolutely.
So
I know that California has that too. I was talking to someone in one of my videos. It was some bill that they were passing that after 7 years, I believe, your felony's automatically expunged. You don't have to go through the process. Therefore, you can still live your life because, being a felon, it's a lifetime punishment. You can't rent a good apartment or house. The only place that you can rent is like in the ghetto, right? So you can't get a lot of jobs. There's tons of jobs you can't get. I don't care how educated you are. They're not going to hire you. So you're just basically shunned from society. And it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that, and I'm not even going to say mistakes, it's just that, like I said, you chose to do something that the vast majority of Americans do anyways. They just didn't get caught. And so now you're basically shunned from society.
Yeah, because you got to think that anything that a common citizen got caught for, especially your example of somebody doing coke or something, right? How many politicians are doing that behind the scenes, right? And just not.
Yeah.
So, come on.
And same thing with with underage drinking, how many judges and district attorneys had a drink before they were 18 or 21, you know what I mean? So, and where did they get that alcohol from? You know what I mean? So like in Colorado, if you provide alcohol to a minor, that's a felony. It's a class 4 felony, and like there's so many countries that don't even have drinking laws, right? And so like a lot of Europe does that, and they don't actually have a drinking problem because they teach their children to drink responsibly at a young age. So 10 years old, they'll let them have a glass of wine with dinner, stuff like that. So when they go out on their own and they go to college, they're not going to parties every night and getting hammered. I mean, that's just the social dynamic of society, right? Is that if you take something away, you want to do that, you know what I mean? Because it's forbidden. So in America, they just go crazy and it's 21 years old. They should at least be 18. Like, you've probably heard the argument that at 18, you can go to war and fight for your country and die. but you can't have a beer. You know what I mean?
It's ridiculous.
Mhm.
And I mean, even in the same regards, you talk about borders, right? You could live in Michigan or whatever, right? Drive right over to Canada and drink and then come right back.
Mhm. Right.
You
Which is
drove
it,
across the line.
it's an arbitrary line. Yeah. And it's the same like with private property. So if I own my home, I'm not allowed to have somebody from another country cross that arbitrary line to come to my property because they have to get through the government. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that as far as like we're talking about, borders, as far as the way that the government is organized today, I think that border control is important because we're, forced to pay taxes. Taxation is violent. If and people say a taxation is not violent, well, try not paying your taxes and see what would happen to you, right?
Have a
Eventually,
violent
force and
result.
coercion will be used on you. So it's violent. You are forced to pay it. And in this society where we're forced to pay taxes, it doesn't do us any good when we have people that come here illegally and then they're taking up funds and resources from our tax dollars but not contributing to those. So like and it's not just with money too. Like my sister, she went to ASU and we're from Colorado, and she was trying to get in-state tuition. She went to school out there for 5 years, and she could not get it. She lived there. She had a job there. Like she'd been going to school there for years. Every time she would get denied for in-state tuition. Yet, if you're an illegal, you can get in-state tuition at any university. You know what I mean? And they're not even a resident of the United States, so that's just not fair. It's the United States is notorious for helping other countries and leaving their own people,
Oh, I
without
was
means,
in the world police and humanitarian aid for way too long.
right? But I want to say though, that said, with the current state of government, that is important. But I do believe there's a better way to organize society. And so therefore, really, there should be no borders. The only border in my society that I envision would be those of private property.
That's a good point. Yeah, and as long as everybody's defending their private property properly,
Say
we'd
that
have
5 times.
borders,
Yeah.
right? Tongue twister. So yeah, yeah, good point. Well, I'll just ask if you don't mind. I'll segue and just ask you a few questions that I posted. Not that they go in any particular order or whatever, but just so we get a who, what, where, why, and when, and kind of thing. But so where was your first audit, or where was your first cop watch or encounter, whatever you would call it?
Okay. My very first one was actually not even intending to do it. It was at a park, and it's actually kind of controversial. A lot of people don't like it, but a lot of people do like it. It's been showcased by a couple of channels. But I was literally at a public park, and me and my dog, Minnie, she was a puppy at that time. She was probably like 2 pounds. The only ones in the entire park, and I didn't have my dog on a leash. And a lot of people like, oh, you should always leash your dog because not just they could get attacked by another dog, this, that, and the other thing. Well, yeah, that's true. And I'm taking that risk on my own. So if that were to happen, that would be my fault. But again, I'm not hurting anyone, right? So if I'm not hurting anyone, just leave me alone. So
Yep.
no victim, no crime. So um, the park ranger came up and started talking to me about leashing my dog. And um, I was probably, I don't know, maybe like I wasn't like right in her space. I was probably at least 4 feet from her, right? And she kept telling me that I needed to back up. And I said, why do I have to back up? She said, you can't get close to me. And I said, well, what law is that? So I was recording, by the way, on my cell phone.
And is
And
that
she said,
what law is it? Is that something you did because you knew that to say that, or it just came to you automatically?
it kind of just, I guess, just came to me, and I was just using things that I'd really had just seen on YouTube from other
Okay.
auditors and stuff.
Okay.
So I knew that it wasn't a law that I can't get close to somebody, right? I can't hurt someone and I can't intimidate them. So if I'm getting in her face, but I wasn't in her face, but if I'm getting really close to her with the intent, that's the thing, intent is important. With the
Yep.
intent to alarm or annoy her, that would be harassment. But I wasn't. I was, like I said, a solid 4 feet away. She kept giving me these unlawful directives that I can't get close to her. It's a law. I asked her what the law is, and I kept moving towards her. And a lot of people didn't like that video because they said, well, you're doing the same thing that the cops did. And I'm not doing the same thing that the cops do, because the cops literally get inches from your face and try to intimidate you. That's not what was transpiring here. So I just kept, every time she'd move back and tell me I need to move back, I'd move one step closer and say, that's not a law. I can get close to you. There's no law that says I can't get close to you. And I said, I understand the leash law, but you're giving me an unlawful directive about I have to stay 6 feet away from you, and that's not a law. So then she went and she was gonna call the police on me, and it was just a couple-minute video. It's like 2.5 minutes, I think. And I just threw it up on YouTube. I made a channel and I threw it up there, and it sat there for a while, didn't get too many views. And then all of a sudden it started getting like hundreds of views, and my subscribers were going up. And I was like, what's going on? And then in the comments, who is it? Oh gosh, can't even, Cameras Everywhere
Okay.
showcased it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, that's cool. And so that kind of gave me some confidence to
I can
do
do
more
this.
audits. Right. So actually the next one that I did was out of DMV, and I was literally getting my driver's license. And so that one got showcased by San Joaquin, and that's when my channel really started to grow. And it was a great audit. It's still up on my channel. And so that was my second one. And then that's how I started growing, with San Joaquin showcased it. And that really just gave me confidence to continue to do it. And that's kind of how my channel started.
Cool. I like that. It's a good story. Um, second one I got here. You kind of answered it earlier, but we'll just tie it in this. Who was your inspiration, or I guess maybe a two-parter? Who is your inspiration in the industry that you're in now? Like, who influenced you as far as a YouTube influencer? And then second part would be like, maybe who, besides the person who you mentioned that wrote that book, or if it is that person, just reiterate that, who's your main influencer in your life?
I would say definitely my main influence is Adam Kokesh. And I've been following him since probably like 2012, 2013, something like that. And so again, he's not an auditor, but he sometimes just ends up doing audits because police will engage with him and try to violate his rights and stuff, and it kind of just turns into an audit. So I would say he's definitely my number one, and it's kind of surreal too, because back then I looked up to him so much, and I still look up to him. And I met him a couple times when he'd come out to Denver. He did a couple different tours, Taxation is Theft tour and For the Love of Freedom tour. And I met him, and I would donate. I remember I gave him $100 because I just really believed in what he was doing. And now, actually, he actually supports me. He's my number one supporter monetarily, anyways. So
Wow,
he
that's
donates to my channel monthly, and it's like, it's so crazy. I'm like, wow, this is like crazy that the guy that got me started in this is now a huge supporter of what I do. So, and
that's a
also, we talk about spiritual stuff. He's starting a spiritual channel coming up. Adam, son of Abraham. It's going to be awesome. It's not a religion, but it's kind of just like a spirituality channel. And so he's going to be doing that. So keep a lookout for that type of stuff too. And then I'd say the next one is Bay Area Transparency. So I saw him, and I was just blown away by his style, the way he does it, very calm. And there would be times where it would seem like he was about ready to leave or something. He does that. He still makes me think that sometimes, like he's about ready to leave, and
exactly.
then he doesn't leave though. And he
Nope.
does that play dumb thing in the beginning, and then he hits him. And sometimes I'll see him take a couple steps back, and I'm like, no, no, no. And then, but he never does. And in fact, the video that he just dropped with Vallejo County was crazy. And he is an absolute beast. Trust me, he gets scared. I mean, you can tell I've been there. He gets scared, but see, the thing is that courage isn't the lack of fear. It's feeling the fear, but doing it anyways. And
Mm,
so when
good
I
point.
saw him, I was just like, wow, this guy is amazing. So I've said on my channel a lot that I'm highly influenced by him and the way he does it. And um, I even say things sometimes that he says, I'll give him a shout out. And so, and that was actually kind of another thing with the Adam Kokesh stuff where, I supported him and now he supports me. So um, I talked to Bay Area Transparency on the phone now and stuff too. And he actually used one of my things where he said, because somebody asked him, I'm going to ask you to stop recording. And he said, I'm going to ask you to take your shoes off. And then he gave me a shout out because that's the thing that I say. So, it's the same kind of thing. So it's just kind of surreal to have that type of stuff happen. But I think definitely those are my main two, and there's plenty of others. Accountability for All, which everyone knows is my best friend, and I've been watching him too since way before I had a channel. He's an absolute beast too. He's another one of those guys that's just he has fear, but he just
Uh,
overcomes it, man. And
Great
he's
segue
amazing.
for me then. So he's this, and maybe he talked to me because you talked to me. I don't know, but he's been hitting me up, or at least I hit him up and he hit me up. So he wanted to get on and then talk to me too, which is freaking fantastic.
Yeah.
So how did you guys meet?
So I guess when my channel first started, because I had a lot of growth in the beginning, I guess one of his supporters reached out to him and said, "Hey man, have you heard of this Denver Metro Audits guy? I think he's a cop." And because he's like, there's no way his channel's growing this fast. And he's like, what? And so he went and checked me out, and he was like, this guy's not a cop, man. He's just badass. He's good. And I remember seeing him in one of my live streams, and I hadn't seen him in a while because he went to jail, and so he was out of the game for like over a year or something. And I was like looking at it, I was like, is that the guy that I think it is that I remember watching? And sure enough, it was. And I told him on the live stream, hey man, accountability for all. Thanks for your support, man. I've been watching you a long time. And then I checked, and yeah, sure enough, it was him. So, and then I guess I kind of just met him through mutual people in the community, like Toe for Life, like the Road and Toe show. He's friends with them too. And so I think I met him maybe on a panel somewhere, something like that. And uh, we just exchange numbers and stuff like that. So, that's another thing too. So, now him and I are best friends. I'm going to be best man in his weddings coming up. So
That's
it's exciting. Yeah. So that's another one. So accountability for all, but there's tons. So I'm going to give a few mentions. High Desert Community Watch. He's another one of those guys that's just,
yeah.
he's pretty fearless. You know what I mean? And the thing that I like too about these types of people is they're always willing to take the arrest. You know what I mean? Like accountability for all and Bay Area transparency. He'll straight up put his hand out. Here you go, man. Put
Yep.
the handcuffs out. And a lot of people will say that, you don't have to take the arrest. That's you can, under threat of arrest is good enough. And that's true. That is good enough. But the problem with that is you're reinforcing that behavior. If you let a cop bully you off a sidewalk, now that cop thinks that next time he can do that too, and he can bully you off a sidewalk.
One step
And
further.
if you go to court and you take a plea deal, well, that's the same thing. I mean, what's the point in doing this if you're going to take a plea deal and say that I'm guilty? Now the district attorney is going to say, hey, look, we bullied this guy off a sidewalk and he took a plea deal, so that means that it's okay, we can do that. And not only that, but when you just get threat of arrest, unless you're going to do this pro se, it's difficult to find an attorney. So a lot of these attorneys is kind of like a stigma. They don't really want to get involved in this type of thing. And it's hard enough to find an attorney that'll represent you in this type of stuff, even if you get arrested, let alone just the threat of arrest.
Now
So that's kind of the way I feel about that.
when you say that, I'm gonna, besides doing it per se, if somebody had the funds to pay for it themselves, obviously there would be somebody who would take the case, right? So if there was a group of people, if there was a group of funds out there to help someone, it would be possible then, correct?
Well,
So
I'm just
some
saying that without money being involved at all, it's hard to find an attorney that's willing to pay just to take the case in general. So
interesting. Okay.
yeah, so we got this guy, David Lane out here in Colorado is like the top civil rights attorney, and he's yet to take any of my cases. But I do have my attorney, Milo, who's great. And I think he's an amazing guy, and he takes all of our stuff because he believes in what we're doing, and that's rare. That's like a unicorn. It's hard to find an attorney that believes in what we're doing. There's so many people out there with the mindset that we're just antagonists and we're just here for clicks and views and we're
Mhm.
trying to get a reaction. No, I'm not trying to get a reaction. There are some people out there that do that. And so those people that, and I'm not talking about my crew that took the plea deal in Sheridan. They took their deal with different circumstances. But the people that go out there and they get bullied off a sidewalk and then they take a plea deal, those are the people that are here for clicks and views. They're not real activists. You know what I mean? They're just here just for YouTube clout or whatever to make money. So that's not what we're here for. I'm not here to try to get a reaction. I literally go into a place and I just mind
Probably
my
not,
business
right?
and people come up to me.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, same thing with attorneys. It's just hard to get people to back you. And so my attorney, Milo, he's great. He really believes in what we're doing. And so when somebody is buying into it, it makes it that much better. They're not just there just to go through the motions.
Yeah, very true. So I didn't know it was that tough. Even if you had funds, 'cause I think when we were talking to people, we were hoping if we could get like if people pooled some money together with, you know, merch sales or ad sales or whatever, and it was a legal fund, for auditors. And I hate it. I don't know. I don't know if I'm using it the right terms, but if there was a way, if we could all come together and formulate that, so that if somebody needed help, and obviously you can't help everyone, and then people are going to come to you and be like, I need help, and it's not a charity. It's like, okay, this guy needs more help. I don't know how to set it up properly, not be corrupt about it, but it's just something we were talking about. So
That's an excellent idea, and we have stuff like that here in Colorado too. So I personally have a fund. So and some of the people have been giving me crap that I just stole the money and stuff, and that's not true. So we actually, all the donations that I've received through for people to bond us out of jail, stuff like that, when we get that money back for the bond, I put it aside. So we have money aside to bond people out, right? For attorney fees, stuff like that. So we kind of keep that money. So if I get funds like through PayPal and stuff for an arrest, I put that money aside. Therefore, we are prepared in Colorado. So we want to stay very organized, and it's only a matter of time before somebody gets hit with a $10,000 bond. You know what I mean? Something crazy. And so
exactly.
then we don't have anything close to $10,000 saved up yet, but with every donation that we get for an arrest, that's what that money's going for, is to continue our activism.
Yeah,
So,
and that's another thing that I'm, what I started obviously blew up extremely fast compared to what I thought what was going to happen, and some of it's overinflated just because of what shorts do, and I kind of fell into that niche. Just that wasn't what I meant to do. It's just kind of what happened. So I guess that's a topic for another day. But that is also something I want to do. Obviously, is I never thought about starting a business or something, or having to start a business to tax shelter things. I was like, okay, how can I give back to this? How can I start something to help others? Or I know there's people in our community that do what we do who are not, who may need assistance otherwise. Their vehicle registration, gas. I have some people in this community who are in our community who just need help getting to court, and I want to be able to help them. So that's kind of something else that I want to give back to as well. So I didn't realize that there was that kind of need out there. So that's one of my goals as well.
right. That's awesome. That's commendable. And
going to meeting Katie and then going to court, just seeing how that process worked, and just being a kind of a fly on the wall to that process, and then hearing her story, and I'm taking everything with a grain of salt too, because the first time I met some of these people, and but I want to give back in some way. I want to give back, however that may come to fruition.
Right. And you're already giving back with doing this interview and doing the shorts and making people aware. That's like the main thing that you can do. Is you're showcasing all the other auditors and getting the message out there more. So I appreciate that.
I guess if you want me to talk on that briefly, and that was, again, that's not what I intended to do. I started doing shorts and stuff that I did only because I was trying to figure out how to do video editing, and that was just kind of, it happened that way. And then I posted a couple, and then one of them just went like, took off, and then I started getting all these comments of like, hey, you didn't give this guy credit, you didn't do this X, Y, and Z, and I was like, I have to do what?
Right.
And I was like, okay. And then I had one auditor was like, gave me a channel strike. He's like, man, you didn't do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, shit, I wasn't trying to be. I was like, I didn't know there was rules.
Right. No, I got you. And so that's cool. And like I told you in your live stream that one day, that I appreciate the way you do it. I mean, when you do a short of me, you put my name up there, Denver Metro Audits, and then you put me in the pinned comment, and that's cool. That's how I do it too. So anytime I do an audit with someone, I'll put their link in the description and the pinned comment. And I'm all about sharing my videos, to help spread the message. So I've never told anyone not to use my content and stuff like that. Like I've had people say, oh, well, they should pay you to do that. They should pay you. And I'm like, no, man, they shouldn't pay me. Like, bigger channels are showcasing smaller channels. That's helping your channel grow,
We're
and so
getting views.
and
The point,
it's not
right?
even about, it's not about the money. You know what I mean? It's just about spreading the message is the most
Exactly.
important thing.
Yeah, and that is just kind of what I fell into, and I was like, and then I started getting better at it, and then when other people like yourself were like, hey, as long as you tag me and do this and X, Y, and Z, and put me in the pin, I was like, I'm like, okay, so I'm like, am I becoming like the Weird Al Yankovic of shorts? As long as I
Yeah.
ask you and it's cool.
Yeah. So, but I want to ask you a question real quick before I forget. What's your forearm say?
We the people.
That's what I thought it said. You know that I like
Uh,
that with the 1776 in the back too. And you know that AFA has that exact same tattoo.
I've seen it, and I didn't even know that, so I wasn't trying to steal or anything. But
Right.
yeah, that's cool. It's supposed to be like a Gadsden flag, but
That's awesome, dude. That'll be some good combo starter for you and him when you interview him.
yeah. So that's cool. Yeah, and I didn't even I don't even know how I found his channel, but then yeah, he came on a couple of live streams and talked to him. So yeah, cool. All right, just a couple more questions. And we've kind of gone over a couple things already, but okay, this is kind of a good one. So it maybe expand on it, but why do you keep doing what you're doing?
I keep doing what I'm doing because I believe in it. You know what I mean? I see the state of the United States today and I see the corruption and I want to change something. I want to get case law in my name. I want to say that I actually did something to help more people be more free. That's the really motivating factor in it. And, you know, people tell me, "Oh, you're just here to make money." And yeah, I am here to make money. I mean, this is what I do for a living. This is my only job. I'm a full-time YouTuber. So it's a win-win because my viewers don't have to pay me, and some do pay me, and that they're members, they give super chat, stuff like that, donations. That's great if you have the money to do that, but you don't have to. You get all my content for free. And everyone wins because then the advertisers win, they get to put their stuff up there, and then I win because I get paid. Nobody has they win because they don't have to pay, all that, right? YouTube gets paid. So it's a great, I love this format, but if I was really here for money, I wouldn't be doing this because I took a huge pay cut. I took a huge pay cut to be an auditor. I mean,
Do
I was
this,
an
right?
electrician and I made pretty good money and I don't even make that much now. You know what I mean? I'm not one of these huge channels. It's getting tons of views. You know what I mean? I'm not balling out of control like some YouTubers are, but I want to get to that point. But um, that's pretty much what it is. It's I want to see change. What was it? Thomas Jefferson said, when the people fear the government, there's tyranny. But when the government fears the people, there's liberty. And clearly we've come to a state in the United States where it's the first way instead of the second, right? And so that's the reason why I do this. And uh, the first people that are going to be attracted to the message of liberty aren't going to be the people that the system treats very well. So we're going on more Adam Kokesh stuff that I learned.
Yeah.
It's not the prom king and queens and the valedictorians, right? It's the misfits and the punks. It's the people that got the short end of the stick firsthand when it comes to government. And so that was me. I experienced that because I was a rebel as a youth in my adolescence,
I was
and
too.
so and not that I'm a bad person, but I like to do things that society or the government says are bad. I don't think they're bad, but I got in trouble with the law and I kind of experienced that. And when I was a kid the same way. I thought the cops are the good guys and government's here to protect you and stuff like that. And after experiencing it, you kind of realize that that's not the way that it is. And law enforcement is a business, and that's why there's all these laws that where they can just steal money from you. And just the way that cops treat you. And even my mom realized this too when I had some interaction with police, and I was actually at the hospital, and the police came in, and they were taking me to jail from the hospital. It was this whole crazy episode, and the police officer was a woman in Littleton Police Department, and she was so rude and condescending and arrogant. And my mom was just like, "Whoa, why is she like this?" And that's when it struck a chord with my mom too. And she's like, wow, there are, these police officers are just on one, man. And so um, that's pretty much why. It's just from experiencing that myself and the corruption is what makes me want to continue to do this. And as I've been doing this, I'm realizing even more corruption. You know what I mean? So the
Opinion, right?
vast majority of my complaints on officers either A, they don't even respond to me and they just completely ignore me, or B, they did their investigation and no wrongdoing. There are occasional where they say that it was confirmed, that they accept that and stuff like that, but mostly not. They're lawless. They won't give you the public records, or they'll charge you a crazy, ridiculous amount of money for public records, claiming that it's going to take them all these hours when the document already exists. You know what I mean? They just have to print it up. So, seeing all the corruption as I'm doing this, it's just like a huge rabbit hole. And so that's why I'm saying, like, this auditing stuff really is just a drop in the ocean. And there's a bigger picture out there, and I haven't quite figured out what it is I'm going to do moving forward with my activism. But just seeing all of the corruption and the arrogance, I think that there's definitely a better way to organize society than the current way that we have. And if you look at like Lackluster, James Freeman, these guys are anarcho-capitalists. They believe in the abolition of the state completely. And on one of the videos that Lackluster showcased of mine, it's the Terry DiGilio video, he explains why we'd be better off with private police. And so I suggest everyone go watch that video. And the reason he said that is because literally Terry DiGilio was sitting there assaulting and harassing me for like 20 minutes straight while the cops just sat there and let it happen because I was recording them because I had a camera. So they just let this guy break the law over and over and over. So the current state of police, they don't protect you anyways. And that's the thing that people also think that, police prevent crime somehow. Police don't prevent crime. I mean, murder is already illegal. You know what I mean? Like for me personally, the reason why I don't murder someone isn't because it's illegal. It's because I have a conscience, right? I know that it's wrong. I'm not going to do that. So, that's the thing. They don't prevent the crime. They show up afterwards and they write some reports, and maybe they find the guy, maybe they don't, maybe there's justice, maybe there isn't. But the fact of the matter is they don't prevent the crime. So, well, people will say, well, how do you, not everyone can afford private police. Well, here's the thing. If you got to keep 100% of your paycheck, how much money do you think you would have extra? And so most Americans pay 50% of their income to the government. And people tell me all the time, oh, no, that's wrong. People don't pay that much. And actually, they do pay that much. So not just in taxes. So maybe you pay 20, 30% income tax, right? But you have more taxes, sales tax. I mean, money is taxed over and over. The same money is over and over and over taxed, right? But it's not just taxes. It's like, that speeding ticket you got, or you got to pay for permission to drive your vehicle in the form of vehicle registration, right? If you got a fishing license, any licenses or permits that you've acquired to work on your own home, getting permission to do all these things, that stuff adds up. And if you figure it out, it's about 40 to 50%. So imagine you got to keep all of that. How much more money would you have? You know what I mean? Like people say, oh, well, I need my Medicaid, so I can't work too many hours because that government provides, they provide good services because not everyone can afford health insurance. Well, that's true, but government does that on purpose because they want you to stay dependent upon them. So if you got to keep all your money and because I mean, as free Americans, right, I own myself. So if I own myself, that means I own the fruits of my labor. So when they take it via taxation, it's theft because I'm not voluntarily giving it to them. They're forcing me to take it from me. So either one of two things happens. Either A, I own myself and they're stealing it from me, or B, I'm a slave.
Okay. Well, and I'll just play devil's advocate for half a second, but let's say that they do take your taxes, which they already do, and then you got something back for it. So I'm saying like right now I get taxed, but I don't get any other protections than anybody else does. I don't. The homeless guy gets. I mean, sometimes homeless people. I'm just using this as an example. Obviously, might get better protection as a non-taxpayer than me as a taxpayer would.
Yeah.
I don't get any added benefits by paying my taxes. And then, like you said, if I don't pay my taxes, then armed guards are going to come to my house and take me away.
Mm-hmm.
And then I become a ward of the state, right? So
right.
it's
and that's the thing is like, the middle class gets the short end of the stick on it every time because, just like with minimum wage stuff. So minimum wage in itself is completely immoral. So it's using force and coercion on peaceful people. The free market can handle all this stuff.
Yep.
So it's up to you as an employee to know your worth, to have a skill, and to be able to negotiate your value with the company. So to force somebody to pay you so much money, is immoral. And when they raise minimum wage all the time, the middle class people don't get a raise, right? So what happens is it doesn't ever work. It works for maybe a little while, and then when you're charged, you have to pay your low skilled employees $15 an hour, to run a cash register. Well, man, that's a lot of money, and they have to make a profit, right? That's why people are in business, is to make a profit. So if you can't make a profit, then they're just going to have to raise their prices. So then when the prices get raised, it's back to the same. If it was $7 an hour, but now, a burger costs $10 instead of $5, it's the same thing. There's no benefit. All it does is hurt everyone else. That's why the middle class is shrinking so low. People actually think that the middle class still is a good portion of it. The vast majority of the people in this country are below the poverty line. The middle class is like a sliver, man. It's basically doesn't even exist. So, like when, middle class, upper middle class, every time they raise minimum wage, all this inflation stuff with the Federal Reserve, it creates, this inflation. And, I know people that used to be upper middle class, and now they're like middle class now. They're not upper middle class, you know what I mean? Because of, the, like you said, you don't get the benefits, but yet you still have to pay for all of these things. So, and that's the problem too, is because like I said earlier, a lot of people will say, well, I can't work this many hours because then I'll lose my Medicaid. And that's true. Like, say they have a surgery coming up and they can't afford the surgery, but if they work this many hours, they'll lose their benefits. So it's advantageous for them to continue to not want to get promoted, right? So it keeps people down. Government keeps you down. So if they did stuff with like Medicaid or food stamps, maybe like my idea for it now, at least with the current state that we have, I'm going to have theft on me, is that instead of just you make a certain amount of money and you cut someone off Medicaid, well, how about, hey, I got this promotion, I'm bettering my life now, so I'm making a little bit more money. So maybe now instead of, a $2 copay, maybe now it's a $15 copay, you know what I mean? Or maybe instead of my medication being free, I pay, $5 for my medication instead of, zero, that's still a good deal. That way you can ease people off of it, and that way you can actually have people that are trying to move up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, there's some truth behind that. And I mean, I go to work, I work at a place that provides me benefits, to which when I go to like the pharmacy, I pay $5 for a prescription, but I'm okay with that because I went to work, they paid for my insurance, and then I pay this guy, and it works. But it's because a lot of people in the system, and not everybody gets that benefit. So, that is what it is sometimes.
And, even like the good services that the government provide, like, let's say that the government does have some type of service, shelters and stuff like that for homeless people. Well, people say, well, yeah, it's a good thing, that there some of that money goes to good services, but it doesn't matter. It's a fundamental principle that we all learned when we were a kid, right? Again, here's some more Adam Kokesh stuff. When you were a kid, your parents taught you don't hit, right? It wasn't don't hit unless you're government or a man with a badge and a gun. It's just don't hit. So it's a fundamental principle that even if it's going towards something good, it's still immoral. I can't go mow my neighbor's lawn and then bang on his door and demand he give me $100. You know what I mean? He didn't ask me for that. That's the same thing with, like, if they are helping homeless people, like, I can't go steal a purse from this lady by force and then go give it to the homeless guy so he can eat, you know what I mean? And say, well, that's a good service. I mean, it doesn't work that way. So if I can't do that, what gives government the right to do that?
Here I have a moral question that goes along those lines, and I pose this upon myself because I actually did this. So I chose not to put. I have a daughter. She's now 17. She's an only child. Just worked out that way, and I chose to not put her in public school, just because the public school system in which I live in sucks ass. I am a middle class person. I had the ability to not put her in public school, so I was able to put her in private school since she was kindergarten. Do you think I should be able then to opt out of paying any school bonds or school taxes?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, that's the majority of what
so I'll just go with you got the yes,
property taxes.
Yeah, but I still have to pay property taxes to the schools, right?
Yeah.
So
exactly, you should be allowed to opt out.
As a homeowner or whatever, I should have to pay my fair share. But if I purposely took a burden off the system, why am I still getting taxed for that?
Right? Absolutely. I agree 100%. if you, and that's a good thing. I actually commend you for not putting your kids in public school, because public school really is just an indoctrination system. What they reward obedience, right? They're grooming the kids at a young age. They reward obedience and measure intelligence by what you can memorize. And then half the stuff that they teach there isn't
Participation
even,
trophies.
it's isn't even real. The history that they teach in schools is not even true. So, number one, good for you for doing that. And yeah, number two, you shouldn't have to pay. And again, I take it even a step further. I don't think anyone should have to pay, but if you aren't using the public school system, absolutely, you shouldn't have to pay.
So I know I have that question when people, talk to me in debates somehow, and the same kind of questions. And I'm like, I do as much as I can, and here's my little small part. So, just a couple more, and then we can bullshit after that. What do you think of the term frauditor?
I think that there's no objective view of reality. Okay. So reality is what you perceive it to be. So actually, Tim Leary, who did a whole bunch of LSD, I think he was the one that came up with this formula. I could be wrong, that A plus B plus C equals rainbow. And so A being the moisture in the air, B being the atmosphere, and C being a set of eyes to visualize it, right? And so that's what makes our reality. And I think that really there's no objective viewpoint. It's just whatever you believe to be true is true. So I think that a lot of people are misinformed, and I think that they honestly believe in their heart of hearts they're doing what they think is right and just, because they think that we're antagonizing people and we're going there to create a reaction. So I just think that they're misinformed, and that's the thing, is you can't convince somebody by using force and coercion. I'm totally against force and coercion. So like Ron Paul says, that voluntarism is always more effective than force and coercion. So we have to be able to somehow convince them of our view. So it's not there to create a reaction. I would be happy if they just left me alone the entire time and I went out of business. And all it takes is some education, because I've actually done Douglas County, government building after government building, and they're always nice, never had any problems so far. So I know that they're doing training. That's all it takes. And if don't be mad at us, be mad at the government. They're not training their employees. I mean, that's pretty much what I think about that word. I think that people are just misinformed, and they in their hearts believe that they're doing what's right. It's just that they don't understand. And I wish that more people would come to the conclusion that holding your government accountable isn't a bad thing, right? It's what the founders envisioned. In fact, rebelling and questioning authority is the most American thing you can do. That's what the founders did, right? If they didn't do that, we wouldn't even be a country. So these people that want you to just obey, just listen to what the cops say, just obey and everything will be okay. Well, just obey and everything will be okay. That's what you tell hostages, right?
Yep.
That's not what you tell free Americans. So is that we want people to buy in. You know what I mean? We don't want people to just go through the motions. And a lot of times people will be, they're like a wolf in sheep's clothing. And I had this happen to me one time with me and Sweet Tea. We went to go renew her gun permit, and we went in there separately, pretending like we weren't together, and she wasn't even recording. And so we're doing our little thing, and I had to go to the restroom, so I left my camera set up. There, was on the tripod, and while I was in the restroom, she went up into the camera and started like making all these funny faces and stuff like that. And the lady behind the glass was like, "Yeah, yeah, right on," because she thought that Sweet Tea was against me, right?
Oh,
But
really?
then yeah. But then when I went to talk to the lady, she's super nice and all that, but like really she can't stand it, and you can kind of tell. And I can't force people to like me. At least if they're going to play the dog and pony show, that's fine. You don't have to agree with what we're doing, but we want people to agree with what we're doing. You know what I mean? We don't want it to be like, oh, well, the First Amendment auditors are here, so let's, be on our best behavior. That should just come natural. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
People should want to be free.
exactly. So another point to that is, I got all these requests to go do the local, I'm not even say local. It's one of the biggest DMV, sorry, Caltrans offices. So that's our local freeway maintenance people who suck ass, take our money and don't do shit. They're like, you got to go there. Those people they won't even let you in. I was like, all right. I spent 2 hours there, nothing. And so I made a video and highlighted, like, hey guys, look, these people do respect you coming in. They're not trying to be dicks. And I got more crap about that. Like, see, you guys didn't even go and instigate. I'm like, I'm not trying to go instigate. I'm just
Right.
trying to highlight that they're doing the right
Yeah.
thing, right?
And see, I think it's just the mindset. I think it's the propaganda and, like I say, the indoctrination system, right? Like we talked about public schools. They teach you that obedience is rewarded. So that's what they want you to do, because and there's a reason too why they stopped teaching civics. It's because they don't want people to know their rights. Because if you know your rights, then you
Yeah,
might
you're not.
exercise them, right? And they want to keep all the power for themselves and we not have any. It's the same reason why the police, they don't have to know the Constitution when they swear an oath to it. Same with the military. They swear an oath to the Constitution, yet they don't even know the Bill of Rights. You know what I mean? So
Words
if
at that
they
point.
actually taught the Constitution, first of all, if you swear an oath to defend something, you should absolutely know it inside and out. But if they actually taught the police what the Constitution is, that's not good for them, because then people will stop enforcing unconstitutional laws. You know what I mean? So I
Wait,
think that essentially it's just the lack of education. It's the dumb down of society. It's the propaganda's working, and it's unfortunate.
cool. What advice would you give to any up and coming new auditors, observers, cop watchers, whatever you want to call it?
I would say get out there and record and push yourself to what you're comfortable with. So, if you're not comfortable getting too close, why don't you just stand, as far away as it takes for you to be comfortable. And like Sweet Tea did that. I remember when I very first met Sweet Tea, we were doing an audit at the health department and stuff started getting crazy and the cops came in, code 3, and I was like, where's Sweet Tea? I couldn't find her. And she was literally across the street on the sidewalk recording, and I thought it was cute. But that's what she was comfortable with. That was her first crazy interaction, and she got scared. And there's nothing wrong with being scared, guys. So
Oh,
it's going to be nerve-wracking, I promise you, especially when you're very first in these situations. But now you look at Sweet Tea, and I just did a video of her, a short with her, where she got right into a cop's face because the cop kept coming up into me and bumped into me and got inches into my face and stuff like that. And then this other sergeant is telling us that you need to give us space. And she walked right up into the cop like an inch from him and said, how would you like it if I did this? Right. So it's a complete 180. So the confidence will come with time. And also another thing that's really important is to know the laws. So, I've said that when I first started, I didn't know that many laws and I just, kind of knew what I knew from YouTube, but I started learning and learning the laws, learning the Colorado revised statutes, learn the laws in your state so that when it's something comes up, you can recite it. Sweetie and I have a books. We got them little books that we put around our neck, and it's got laminates of all the laws, kind of like DirectD does. And so if I'm here with an audit, I can look up the law real quick and quote it, quote the CRS and quote it verbatim what it says. That really shuts down people pretty quick. So I think doing what you're comfortable with and knowing the laws are probably the most important things. And everything else will just come with time. Like your confidence will come the more you do it, you get more comfortable. But if you think that maybe you should do it, that's your intuition. That's your higher self talking to you. You should do it. And the more people that we have to do this, the better off we'll be.
all right. Thanks, everybody. This is Mr. Obvious here, and thanks for having Denver Metro Audits on today. We're just having basically just fireside chit chat. Want to thank him with down the bottom of my heart. This is my first time doing this, and hopefully there will be lots more. This content is for you guys. This is for you guys to share, to like get to know us a little bit better, and just to give some insight and some background, and just we are human too, and we want to make this country in a better place, and that's ultimately our goal. At least that's my goal. So